Tell me about the Center for Western Studies.
Well, this is a project that I started with several of my colleagues when I was teaching college. That's a gap year program. The
Okay.
idea is that we give a gap year to young people between high school and college. It's a very popular thing to do in the UK,
Oh,
but
okay.
and it hasn't caught on so much in the United States yet. But we think that it's going to. There are some schools actually, Princeton and one in particular, and some others too, some other Ivies, are encouraging students actually when they apply to take a year off before they come. And the reason they think is that it gives you a little more maturity, you're a little more settled maybe when you come, you have gotten a little of your energy out, your desire to see the world a little, and when you come you get more out of college. Well, what we were thinking was, what about combining that idea of a little more maturity with a Christian mind about the history of Western ideas? Because what I'm finding is that more and more um, colleges and universities are not all that interested in the Christian foundations of the ideas that we see in our own heritage.
Right.
And so
That would
they're
be an understatement, I
I
think.
think that's understated.
Yes.
There's actually an active antipathy toward a Christian
Right.
foundation for thinking, and it's a kind of insanity. I think it's actually kind of like mental illusion they're
Mhm.
believing, because you can't actually do this work seriously without the connection to a transcendent God.
Right.
And the only reason that we have universities to begin with is because they were Christians.
Right. Well, university means all things under one, under God.
That's right. That's right. I had a friend once who was a Catholic priest who worked in India, and I asked him how many universities there were in India, and he said, "Oh, there are lots of them." I said, "Well, how old are they?" And he said, "Maybe 150, 200 years old." And I said, "Well, in the West, they're 800 years old. Why are they so young in India?" And he said, "Oh, that's easy. I can tell you that. Hinduism never would have created a university, ever,
Huh.
ever. The only
Yeah.
reason they're Indian universities is that people in India went to Cambridge and studied, or Oxford or Paris or wherever, went to Europe and studied, and came back and started them. Or people from those places came as colonists or whatever and settled there and built universities. There's nothing in Hinduism that would teach that we should study the world like that.
Hmm.
So here we are living a kind of contradiction where we have a thing called a university that was born out of a Christian view of the world that now is
Right.
rejecting the Christian view that built it. And the result of that is that we grow our young people through the church, through Christian schools and so on, Christian education. We send them off to college. And from what I understand, 50% of them are losing their faith.
Right.
It's an astonishing number. So we thought, what could we do to help solidify for them what a Christian mind looks like? And how could we give them a taste of college work from people who are Christian believers, Christian professors, who can give them some solidity and some gravity to their faith, so that when they're in a classroom with an atheist philosophy professor, they're not going to have their legs knocked out from under them, spiritually speaking, intellectually speaking.
Right.
We make as our goal to teach them a Christian view of the world and the history of Western ideas through the great books, through the great humanities of
Okay.
Western civilization. And more those things are being undermined in the universities. So if they can see the connections between what we believe and why we believe it, and how these things embody, these traditional works embody those things, then what I'm hoping for is that they'll be able to go into any college they want to and be able to hold their own, not just to ignore or run away from those people they disagree with, but to hang in there with them and learn a lot from them.
Right.
See, I want him to go to that atheist professor and learn everything he can from him, and yet not buy the presuppositions that he has about who man is, who God is, and so on.
Right.
So we take a year and we study from Homer to the 20th century in a year in the great books in art and music and architecture, and then we rent an apartment in Paris and we take them overseas and
Oh,
we
wonderful.
see Paris. We take a rented apartment in London and we go over there, and they get a chance to go to the Louvre, to go to the Westminster Abbey, to go to Oxford, to go to Sainte-Chapelle or to Chartres Cathedral and see something of the great accomplishments of the Western world.
Some of those foundations, so that when they claim that that is not what we're preserving,
Yes.
they've seen otherwise. They've learned and seen. Okay.
I had a student one time who was walking through the ambulatory of Notre Dame, Paris, with me, and looking up at these beautiful ribbed vaults and these fantastic flying buttresses and these grand stained glass windows, and she said, "Is this what you mean by Western civilization?" And I said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And she had tears in her eyes, and she said, "We're doing the right thing. This is why we ought to do this,
Yeah.
to support this, to say this is possible, and it's impossible without the faith." This came about by people saying, "I understand who God is, and I see and I believe that who He is, and this is the glory that we can do. This is what we can do to glorify this God."
Glorify God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.
That's all right. That's okay.
No, that was that
Just
was
that it's
great.
worth preserving.
Yeah,
It's worth preserving and handing down.
Oh, yes. The and all of this foundation is what has been relegated to what modern professors would call, in the post-Enlightenment era, the Dark Ages.
Oh, right.
So
right.
the
Bizarre.
so this is the Dark Ages. This glory that the cathedrals, the
Right.
Thomas Aquinas, all these
Dante,
things,
sure.
Dante's works, these literary works,
Right.
have been relegated to the Dark Ages by the Enlightenment.
So true. It's so true. And because of that, then, I mean, unless you have an understanding of the Bible, you can't actually make sense of even modern painting. So we not only look at cathedrals, we try and understand Monet, you see, and the Impressionists, or Picasso and the Cubists, because they too are products of, even if they've rejected the faith, they are products of this Western civilization that is so founded on the faith. And the things that they're after, some of the things that they're after, are still in line with what the Christian teaching about the world is, see? But you can then see where they've gone offline.
Right.
So I think Christians actually can do a better job of explaining non-Christians than the reverse.
Right. Because they understand the foundation they're standing on.
That's right. That's right. Picasso and Stravinsky couldn't have done what they did in the early part of the 20th century had they not been responding to what had gone on in the previous 1900 years. More than that, 2,500 years. Right.
So tell me, how many professors are there, and how does the program work?
Good,
if
thanks.
I were an interested student,
Yeah.
how would one apply?
Well, we have a website, www.centerws.com, and Center for Western Studies, centerws.com, and there's an application on there. It also tells you a lot about what we're doing. We have 7 professors altogether, 7 of us. One of them is an expert in epic poetry. Another one is an expert in romantic poetry. Another is an expert in Shakespeare, Chesterton. We have a theologian. We have a political history fellow. So he does Plato and Edmund Burke and people like that. And then my expertise is in music and the art history. So we talk about the same ideas that inspired, say, Beethoven to write his symphonies, inspired Delacroix to paint his paintings, and Wordsworth to write his prelude, and on and on and on. So we make connections among the various arts and books and so on. Okay. And so there's 7 of us all together, and we have every week we have a lecture from one of the professors for all the students. Okay. We have a one-on-one tutorial with one of the faculty for each student.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they have and that's where they're writing papers and digging in deeper to things. And then we have a very long discussion time on Thursdays where we get together at like 2:30 in the afternoon and we talk for a couple of hours and then have tea, and then we talk for another couple of hours and have dinner, and then we talk after dinner, and it's like 2:30 to about 8 at night where we unpack all the stuff that's been talked about that week, the lectures that week, what people are doing in their tutorials so that they can learn from each other, and give them a chance to ask their questions too, and let the rabbit trails go where they will, because all
Okay.
these things are connected together. See,
The kind of recitations. So
that's
lecture
right. Exactly
recitation.
right. Exactly right. That's
Wonderful.
exactly right. So we base a lot of it on that kind of Oxford approach to education, that tutorial kind of approach to education. And then on the weekends, we will go to various shows. Say we go to an opera or a ballet or a theater piece or some guest lecturer in town, or visit one of the museums in Memphis. This is all in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
And then we travel, like I said. We take a trip to Paris and to London in the springtime. In the fall, we usually go to the LaBrie branch in Rochester, Minnesota, for a couple of weeks, so that they get a taste of what it's like to live at LaBrie, Francis Schaeffer's organization. And
I thought you were going to talk about the one in Switzerland. That's
right.
the only one I've been to.
Oh, you've been to the Swiss
Yes, I
LaBrie.
have.
Excellent, excellent. Well, this is the branch of the Swiss LaBrie that's in Rochester, Minnesota.
As you were explaining it, I was actually thinking of LaBrie. I was like, oh, that reminds me
Yes,
of
indeed.
the LaBrie
We're very
model.
much inspired by LaBrie. I've been teaching for LaBrie as a sort of guest lecturer for 20 years, I guess.
Okay, wonderful.
So that's the sort of thing we do. And they live with host families. If they come in from out of town, then we have Christian families that take them in and host them.
Okay.
And the ones that are in town, of course, live with their own families, their own parents. But we have a lot of time that we work with them, and then they have time to go and do a part-time job.
Okay.
We encourage them in this gap
So
year
there's
to
room for
there's room for volunteer work, or for working at the local Starbucks or whatever they're going to do, a little job here and there, make a few extra dollars, and teaches them more about being responsible and handling their money and handling their time and so on. And we think it's a good year so that they actually get a lot more out of their college years.
Right.
It helped. Nearly every student that's come through has come in with one idea about where he wanted to go to college and what he wanted to study, and has gone out with another one.
Okay.
And we think that has saved the parents a heck of a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Beyond that, since they don't actually get credit for it, college credit for it, although it is college worthy, and they can CLEP out of classes because of what we do, history, U.S. not U.S. history, world history, or art appreciation or music appreciation. There are a lot of things, literature classes, lots of literature classes. They can do that. But more than that, what we find is that they do better in their scholarships. We'll have students that come to us. For example, one fellow said, I applied and was accepted to a college, and they said, we have an honors program, but you need to submit an essay. Well, he submitted an essay that he wrote for us, see, and they snapped him up. And with getting into the honors program, became a whole big scholarship, see.
Wow.
So it was actually cheaper for him to go to school because he came to us than the otherwise. And we've had others that have gotten big scholarships because of it's a very unusual thing. Scholarship committees say, wait a minute, tell me again what you're doing this year?
Right.
You're taking a year off to read great books? And they say, yeah, that's what we're doing. You must be something.
Right.
You see, that's red flags go off, and good ones, I mean.
Right.
That's an interesting kid. I want to talk to him more, And so that's possible.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
And then I think they just have a little more maturity under their belts, when they go. So that's what we're doing in Memphis, called the Center for Western Studies. That's just actually one part of what we're doing. We're actually doing an adult seminar online. So we have a great books series that we do with adults that can get online and do it,
Okay.
So every 2 weeks we have a lecture for them, and in the fall and the spring. And then we have, we're doing short little 10-minute videos. I want to talk to you about short little 10-minute videos that are about particular ideas that we might bring up, and we, rather than a sort of talking head video, I'm off the camera and I use all sorts of artwork to show them what's going on.
Yes.
So maybe I have a map of Paul's missionary journeys and I'm drawing arrows on or something, or here's a picture of Chartres Cathedral and notice this is different than that, and so on.
Right.
and all of that in order to give people a little taste of what we're doing. And a bunch of those videos are actually on our website now.
Okay, well, I will go look at
So
them.
take a look and see what you think.
Yeah.